According to advocacy groups working on the ground in Texas, the situation has become so dire for immigrant women that it should be considered a human rights crisis. Representatives from the Center for Reproductive Rights have even traveled to Geneva to testify in front of the United Nations Human Rights Committee, arguing that the situation facing Texans violates the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which the United States has ratified. In general, undocumented immigrants seek health services less frequently than the rest of the U.S. population, specifically because they're worried their doctor will turn them over to law enforcement authorities. Though federal privacy laws technically prevent immigration officials from accessing patient health records, that's little comfort to people who have grown up afraid of coming into any contact with medical professionals. According to UCLA researchers who recently conducted focus groups on the subject, undocumented immigrants in California say that you learn early on to avoid going to the doctor. It's a basic human right to be able to get medical care. Clarissa Guajardo, the attorney representing Borrego, told the Houston Press. It wasn't like she was getting public assistance even. She had an established doctor-patient relationship with that gynecologist. This shouldn't have happened like this. No, it shouldn't have happened like this. And this points at something we were talking about. I don't know if you remember, was it 2 weeks ago? I don't even know. I can't remember. Oh yeah, this was a show that hasn't aired yet, so you wouldn't remember this. But anyway, I was talking, this was a Skype-only show, and I think it was last week. Anyway, whenever it was, we were talking about some of the services that CU Immigration tries to offer. And amongst those services, we try to give workshops whenever there's a new government-sponsored thing, like the driver's license for undocumented immigrants or the DAPA things. We've striven to put together some kind of workshops which we can offer to the community so that people can come in and we can help them by demystifying some of the paperwork that they have to deal with. And the reason for this is that the single most common situation that all of us in the Immigration Forum have run into over the years, which is one reason that we started the forum in the first place, was friends, family members, friends of friends, even strangers, seeking help in understanding what was going on when they had to interact with a government entity. Now, as anybody who's tried to fill out their own tax forms knows, it's not easy to read government legalese. Contracts of any sort can be difficult to read. I remember in my early years as a musician getting contracts fairly regularly and having to read through them, or being offered contracts fairly regularly and having to read through them and try to understand what it was I was being obligated to and what the possibilities were down the road. It's not just what you're being asked to do right now, but what happens a year from now or 2 years from now? What happens if in this situation or that situation? What if something changes? How is that dealt with? All those things are ideally, ostensibly codified in a contract. But as anyone who has ever had to wade through a few of those realizes, there are a lot of different ways of putting the wording so that it just slants things or massages the situation to the point where somebody wins and somebody loses. Now, government paperwork is not supposed to be like that particularly. It is structured differently, but it has that same sort of attempting to cover every possible exigency, if I could put it that way, every possible permutation of what might happen or what someone's situation might be. So when you're looking at your tax form, you know, it'll be like, did you do this? A, was it like this? B, was it like that? C, if it was like this, go here. D, if it was one of or the other of the first two, then go here. I mean, it's like everything is if then, like computer programming. Have you ever done computer programming where it's like, if this, then that? If this, then that. And you're supposed to think of every possible thing that someone could try to do or that someone would try to do, and then come up with a response to it so that you don't have a program where it's like you push one button the wrong way and then the program just stops and it's like, okay, sorry, I didn't understand that. So it's trying to account for all the different ways that people will try to use it. And government paperwork is a lot like that. It tries to take a single project or program or plan and then make it sort of retroactively, well, not retroactively, but make it fit every possible person that might want to come in and use it and apply to every possible situation. So they don't have a different form for every person that comes in. Like, oh, your name is Tom. All right, you get the Tom form. And then the form is very easy because the Tom form is tailored to me. So it says, okay, Tom, you want to do this? Then here's what you do. It's a simple paragraph. But instead it's the everybody in the entire United States form. So it just tries to cover every possible permutation. And so that's difficult enough when you speak the language, to go through those things, to look at them, to decipher them, and make sense of them. When you don't speak the language, or when you understand it in a general way, but don't really, you're not familiar with it, you certainly didn't grow up speaking it, and when you don't have all the cultural references and the familiarity of having done this sort of thing a dozen times before, so you kind of know what to expect, it can be, it can be just mind-boggling. And so that really, it's situations where immigrants run into authorities, police, medical people, any kind of government, city, state, federal government kinds of things. It's like, I just don't even want to deal with it. I can't touch this. I have no idea what this is. I don't know what it means. I already told my story on that. I won't tell it again. But anyway, it has happened before, and I've dealt with this for people and tried to help them figure this out. And it's a very consistent problem. So that's one thing CU Immigration was designed, or no, CU Immigration wasn't designed to do that, but it was designed to help us who do that figure out ways of doing that. And then over time it has become, we have attempted to try to take on some of the more common situations like that and help people deal with them. So I can imagine these people coming into Europe having all sorts of just terrible problems with the various governments that they meet here. And this poor woman who went in to just see her doctor, and all of a sudden is just like, oh, you're under arrest. It's just, that's the kind of thing that can happen so easily when you have to navigate these kinds of spaces without help, and you have to try and figure it out on your own. So anyway, we're significantly past the halfway point. I should remind you that you're listening to CU Immigration here on WRFU-LP Urbana 104.5 FM and or UPTV. I forgot to stop us at the half-hour point, so this is going to be a nightmare to edit for the UPTV version, but oh well, I'll deal with it. So anyway, as we continue on here, here's one that's slightly different. It's kind of good news and bad news mixed together, but I'll read it because it's kind of interesting. This is entitled Anthropology in Action, Identifying Missing Migrants. It's about UA doctoral student Robin Renicky, who co-founded the Colibri Center for Human Rights, a family advocacy organization that is working to end migrant deaths. So this year marks 100 years of excellence in anthropology at the University of Arizona. The Department of Archaeology, which would later become the School of Anthropology, started its first semester on September 15, 1915. Since then, UA anthropologists have engaged in important work on local, national, and international levels. In honor of UA's Anthropology Centennial, this series spotlights some of the ways in which UA anthropologists and anthropology students are working with partners in the greater Tucson area. A hairbrush, a bus ticket, a stuffed purple dinosaur, a container of Vaseline. These are among the many items left in the desert by immigrants who attempt to cross into the U.S. from Mexico. And they are sometimes the best clues authorities have for identifying those who die traversing the rugged terrain. In Arizona, an average of 170 men, women, and children lose their lives crossing the U.S.-Mexico border every year. Because of the harsh desert conditions, their bodies are often unrecognizable by the time they are found, making it nearly impossible to identify them and notify their families in Mexico. Robin Rennecke, a UA anthropology doctoral student, is committed to finding out who they are. Thousands of families are suffering without answers, and anthropologists have a duty to show up, she says. These are vulnerable people from places traditionally studied by anthropologists, and they're losing their lives in the city where we live. Rennecke is an executive director and co-founder of the Colibri Center for Human Rights, a family advocacy organization that is working to end migrant deaths. The center works with families and forensic scientists to collect missing persons reports and to identify those who die in the desert. The organization also works on policy reform and partners with artists and storytellers to raise awareness of humanitarian issues on the border. Rennecke began her efforts in 2006 during her first year as a graduate student in the UA School of Anthropology. She was interested in how cultural anthropology could be applied in conjunction with forensic anthropology to help in a disaster or conflict. Aware of the crisis on the U.S.-Mexico border, she reached out to forensic anthropologist Bruce Anderson in the Pima County Office of the Medical Examiner. Rennecke was inspired by Anderson's efforts to identify the bodies of border crossers. It's not typically the job of a medical examiner's office to manage the missing persons side of the investigation, but because immigrants are often not U.S. citizens, and therefore local law enforcement doesn't handle their cases, Anderson had taken it upon himself to help families identify their loved ones, using detailed physical descriptions and clues such as jewelry and other personal effects found with bodies. I was really motivated to work with him because I recognized him as someone with an intense moral compass, Rennecke says. In addition to having the highest caseload in the county of any forensic anthropologist, he was also taking down information from the family members who were calling his office directly looking for their relatives. As the number of migrant deaths increased over the years, the job has become too big for one person. So after meeting with Rennecke, Anderson enlisted her help, and thus the Missing Migrant Program was born. Anderson had started the project with a 3-ring binder about 250 hard-copy missing persons reports that had been called into the Pima County Office of the Medical Examiner. Over the next 7 years, Rennecke took hundreds more of those calls as the office's in-house missing persons family advocate. Robin's a special person, and her drive and intellect and passion for this makes her the best person for this job, says Anderson, a UA alumnus and adjunct assistant professor in the School of Anthropology. Rennecke began managing a digital database of missing migrant reports. As word got out, her caseload grew to a whopping 1,300, and the need for more help became clear. In 2013, with support of more than $100,000 from the Ford Foundation, Rennecke and William Mason, a UA Eller College of Management alumnus, co-founded the Colibri Center for Human Rights to continue and expand upon the work of the Missing Migrant Project. The word colibri is Spanish for hummingbird, which is a common Mexican symbol of safe passage and a messenger between the living and the dead. The center's name was inspired by a man who died crossing the border in 2009. Among his remains was a small dead hummingbird carried in his pocket. Today, anyone who calls the Pima County Office of the Medical Examiner to report a missing migrant is routed through the nonprofit Colibri Center, which operates 2 offices, one inside the medical examiner's office and one in downtown Tucson. Their staff, volunteers, and interns from the UA Honors College process the information and see if they can make a match to data about unidentified remains produced by Anderson and others at the medical examiner's office. Call frequency can range from as few as 3 a week to as many as 15 a day during peak summer months, when deaths in the desert are at their highest, Renneke says. With so many people missing and often so few clues, making a positive identification is challenging, but when successful, it can help bring families closure, she says. Those notification calls are some of the hardest things any of us has ever done in our lives. But in general, it's cathartic for the family, Renneke says. There's a lot of crying, there's a lot of pain, but very often they also express gratitude. For someone to express gratitude when they are hearing such terrible news, you know that that experience of having a missing person must have been torture. Renneke's work with Anderson on the Missing Migrant Project and with the Colibri Center has attracted national and international attention from media outlets such as the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, and the BBC, among others. The center now maintains the largest, most comprehensive database of missing migrants in the nation, and Renneke hopes to share the Colibri Center knowledge and tools with other border communities. Part of what we're trying to do at Colibri is take the knowledge and experience that we've gained working with the exceptional humanitarians and scientists here in Pima County and share that with smaller, less well-funded counties, she says. For Renneke, the work is far more than just a job. There's a mass disaster occurring in our backyard, she says. I feel very strongly that it's a moral obligation and duty to utilize my expertise and my training as an anthropologist to do the best I can for my fellow human beings who are living a nightmare very close to where I live. So, granted, this is more about someone reacting to a situation than the situation itself, but I thought it was worth bringing up because in our small way, CU Immigration is trying to do something like this, which is just reach out and help. I mean, these people prior to this, people were just saying, oh, it's not my job. These aren't U.S. citizens, so nope, can't help you. And they were leaving everybody up in the air, everything up in the air. Nobody was doing anything about this. Bodies were being buried just sort of randomly. I remember reading a story not that long ago about how they found a bunch of bodies buried in a mass grave and that they were people that had died trying to make the crossing. No laws were broken because, hey, these aren't citizens, so there's no law saying what we're supposed to do with them. Just put them away. Get rid of them. And that's... Yeah, that's what we're all kind of trying to work on in various ways, is this sense that, hey, it's not my problem. I shouldn't have to deal with this because this is somebody else. They're from another country. Let them figure it out. Let them worry about it. And it's just not right. And if nothing else we do, if nothing else comes from our attempts to spread information and educate people about the difficulties of migrants and refugees, and I would hope that it is giving a greater sense that these are people with families and lives and hopes and dreams who are, for whatever reason, coming here because they think it's going to be better here. And if we don't make it better for them, insofar as we are able to do so, insofar as we can do so without making it worse for us, okay, let's look at the flip side of this and say, hey, we can't, give up everything. We can't starve so that they can feast, or whatever. I mean, I'm willing to entertain that as a point of view or as a perspective that's at least worth taking into consideration. But speaking strictly for myself, I'm far from starving. And, I lead a pretty good life. And so it doesn't cost me more than I can afford to do what I can to try to make this community more welcoming to immigrants, this country more welcoming to immigrants. I'm doing fine, and I am doing that work. And so if more people realize that they can do that, if they stopped being scared, like, oh, these guys are going to come take my job, they're going to steal our women, or whatever it is that people are thinking is going to happen, and just start going, well, okay, these people are coming here, they want space, they want consideration, they want understanding, they just want a chance. All right, let's give them that. That doesn't seem to me too much to ask. That's not like a huge burden on any of us to have somebody just ask to be given a chance. I don't know. I mean, that just doesn't seem like something that's too much for anyone to ask anywhere. I mean, that's kind of what we're all asking, isn't it? I mean, we don't want to be stereotyped. I don't want somebody looking at me going, oh, typical middle-aged guy. Look, he's bald, he wears glasses, he's kind of dumpy, and he's got wrinkles. All right, he's one of those. And then just lump me in with everybody else. I'm different. I'm unique. I am me. I am willing to accept that you are different, and you're unique, and you are you. And give you a chance to show me who that is. And I think, really, that's all any of us ask from each other, is just an opportunity to demonstrate ourselves, our goodwill, our kindness, our thoughts, our insights, our knowledge, share our knowledge with whoever might need it. I mean, that's all any of us really wants to do. And that's all immigrants are asking from us is, hey, let us do that too. Let us be human beings along with you and disregard where we come from and pay attention to who we are. Don't worry about where we came from. Worry about where we're going. That's it. That's all anybody's asking. And I don't think that's too much of anybody to ask of anybody. So we're getting near the end of the show. I don't know that there's time to really read anything else. I'll just briefly comment on this because I saw it on here and it's pretty goofy. There's a CNN poll that states that guns, immigration, and abortion are increasingly important to voters. So it says across 3 domestic issues that are shaping up to be more important to the 2016 presidential election than they were in 2012, gun control, illegal immigration, and abortion, polling generally suggests Democrats have the upper hand in terms of public opinion, but a new CNN poll finds the nuances in view on these issues don't always favor one party over the other. All 3 have become increasingly important to voters and prominent within the campaign itself and could come up during Wednesday's Republican debate hosted by CNN. In June 2011, 22% of voters called gun policy an extremely important issue in their vote for president. That's risen 20 points to 42%. Likewise, 29% called illegal immigration a top issue in 2011. That's up 10 points to 39%, while the share calling abortion an extremely important issue is up 7 points to 27%. It's kind of ironic to have CNN, one of the premier news channels, media news channels, talking about this as if it happened naturally somehow. It's like, gosh, people are becoming more interested and concerned about the issues that we keep talking about all the time. I wonder how that could have happened. There you have our media. It's all in how you report things. So they're reporting this as if it's just happening on its own without any input from them, and I don't even know what to say about that. But it is, of course, becoming increasingly important because the media outlets are talking about it more and more and more. So naturally, people are becoming more concerned about it. Illegal immigration has become a defining issue in the race for the Republican nomination for president, as GOP frontrunner Donald Trump has focused his campaign on claims that illegal immigration is destroying the country and his ideas for solving the problem. Most Americans say the solutions ought to focus more on border security and a path to citizenship over deportation, but about half are receptive to Trump's proposals, including building a wall along the entire border with Mexico and ending birthright citizenship for children of those in the country illegally. Asked whether the nation's top priority in dealing with illegal immigration should be deporting those already in the country, developing a plan to stop new illegal immigration, or developing a plan to allow those already in the U.S. illegally with jobs to become legal residents, a plurality say a plan to make those here illegally legal residents is most important. 46%. Thank you, America. Despite all the junk that they throw at you, at least more people think that it's more important to figure out how to help the people already here than any of the other things mentioned. And this is despite 24-hour, round-the-clock, nonstop demagoguery from an entire political party, an entire 24-hour news channel, faux news, or otherwise known as Fox News. Despite all that, at least more people, less than half of the people in the country, or the polled, but at least more people than had the other viewpoints. That tells me that there's more humanity here than there is inhumanity, even despite the best efforts of those who would make inhumanity rule the day, the rule of the day, however you want to put that. There's more humanity here, and that, I think, is something we're celebrating. So with that, I'm going to close the show. Thank you for listening, watching, whatever you did. We'll be back next week with more CU Immigration here on WRFU LP Urbana, 104.5 FM, and UPTV. Thanks.